Joseph Beyrle is thought to be the only American soldier to have served with both the United States Army and the Soviet Army in World War II. Born in Muskegon, Michigan, Beyrle graduated from high school in 1942 with the promise of a scholarship to the University of Notre Dame, but enlisted in the Army instead. U.S. Army. Upon his enlistment, Beyrle chose to become a paratrooper, joining the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment of the 101st Airborne Screaming Eagles Division, specializing in radio communications and demolition, and was first stationed in Ranbury, England to prepare for the upcoming Allied invasion from the west. After 9 months of training, Beyrle completed 2 missions in occupied France in April and May 1944, delivering gold to the French resistance. On June 6, D-Day, Beyrle's C-47 came under enemy fire over the Normandy coast, and he was forced to jump from the exceedingly low altitude of 120 meters. After landing in Saint-Camy-du-Mont, Sergeant Beyrle lost contact with his fellow paratroopers, but succeeded in blowing up a power station. He performed other sabotage missions before being captured by German soldiers a few days later. Prisoner of war. Over the next 7 months, Beyrle was held in 7 different German prisons. He escaped twice, only to be recaptured each time. Beyrle and his fellow prisoners had been hoping to find the Red Army, which was a short distance away. After the second escape, Beyrle was turned over to the Gestapo by a German civilian. Beaten and tortured, he was released to the German military after officials stepped in and determined that the Gestapo had no jurisdiction over prisoners of war. The Gestapo were about to shoot Beyrle and his comrades, claiming that he was an American spy who had parachuted into Berlin. Beyrle was taken to the Stalag 3C POW camp in Alt-Deutz, from which he escaped in early January 1945. He headed east, hoping to meet up with the Soviet Army. Encountering a Soviet tank brigade in the middle of January, he raised his hands, holding a pack of Lucky Strike cigarettes, and shouted in Russian, "Amerikansky Tovarishk." Beyrle was eventually able to persuade the battalion's commander to allow him to fight alongside the unit on its way to Berlin, thus beginning his month-long stint in a Soviet tank battalion, where his demolitions expertise was appreciated. Soviet Army. Beyrle's new battalion was the one that freed his former camp, Stalag 3C, at the end of January, but in the first week of February, he was wounded during an attack by German Stuka dive bombers. He was evacuated to a Soviet hospital in Landsberg and Erwarth, where he received a visit from Soviet Marshal Georgy Zhukov, who, intrigued by the only non-Soviet in the hospital, learned his story through an interpreter, and provided Beyrle with official papers in order to rejoin American forces. Joining a Soviet military convoy, Beyrle arrived at the U.S. Embassy in Moscow in February 1945, only to learn that he had been reported by the U.S. War Department as killed in action on June 10, 1944 on French soil. A funeral mass had been held in his honor in Muskegon, and his obituary was published in the local newspaper. Embassy officers in Moscow, unsure of his bona fides, placed him under Marine Guard in the Metropole Hotel until his identity was established through his fingerprints. Post-military, Beyrle returned home to Michigan on April 21, 1945, and celebrated VE Day 2 weeks later in Chicago. He was married to Joanne Halal in 1946, coincidentally, in the same church and by the same priest who held his funeral mass 2 years earlier. Beyrle worked for Brunswick Corporation for 28 years, retiring as a shipping supervisor. His unique service earned him medals from U.S. President Bill Clinton and President Boris Yeltsin of Russia at a ceremony in the Rose Garden of the White House marking the 50th anniversary of D-Day in 1994. Death. Beyrle died in his sleep of heart failure on December 12, 2004 during a visit to Toccoa, Georgia, where he had trained with paratroopers in 1942. He was 81. He was buried with honors in Section 1 of Arlington National Cemetery in April, 2005. Legacy. Beyrle and his wife Joanne had a daughter, Julie, and 2 sons. The elder son, Joe Beyrle II, served in the 101st Airborne during Vietnam. His son John Beyrle served as the United States Ambassador to Russia 2008 to 2012. On September 17, 2002, a book by Thomas Taylor about Beyrle, The Simple Sounds of Freedom, was published by Random House. A Ballantine paperback version, Behind Hitler's Lines, came out June 1, 2004. In 2005, a plaque was unveiled on the wall of the church in Saint-Camy-du-Mont, France, where Beyrle landed on June 6, 1944. A permanent plaque was dedicated at the site on July 5, 2014. An exhibition devoted to Joe Beyrle's life and wartime experiences was shown in Moscow and 3 other Russian cities in 2010. The exhibition opened a 4-city American tour at the National World War II Museum in New Orleans, with showings in Tocco, Georgia and Omaha in 2011, and Beyrle's hometown of Muskegon, Michigan in June 2012. A permanent installation of the exhibition is now on display at the USS Silversides Museum in Muskegon. Notes: Taylor, Thomas H., The Simple Sounds of Freedom, Random House, 2002, pages 310, Normandy, 70th Anniversary D-Day Events May-August 2014, The Washington Times Communities, December 15, 2013, celebrating Jumpin' Joe Beyrle and Russia-USA cooperation on the 65th anniversary of VE Day www.onevictory.org. July 12, 2015. Archived from the original on July 1, 2013. Retrieved July 12, 2015. External links: NBC Nightly News Obituary, Taylor, Thomas H. Behind Hitler's Lines: The True Story of the Only Soldier to Fight for Both America and the Soviet Union in World War II. Random House. ISBN 9780891418450. Retrieved December 15, 2013. Lay Summary. Allington National Cemetery Site.